Thanks for listening to the ArtTactic Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Green. As the art world starts to slow down for the summer, it's always nice to take a moment on the podcast to look at some of the exciting projects, initiatives, and communities shaping the art world today. So in this week's episode of the podcast, we're joined by Greta Scarpa and Chimère Cissé, the co-founders of STELLA Alliance, an international community created to strengthen the visibility and influence of women collectors in the art world. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for listening. Greta and Chimère, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely. Well, you've gotten a lot of attention with STELLA, and it's exciting to have you on to chat a little bit more about women collectors in the art world. I think a great place to start is if you can introduce to our audience what STELLA is exactly. Who is it for, and what inspired you to establish this private alliance for women collectors?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in on that. So STELLA is a private international alliance for women collectors, patrons, and cultural leaders. And we work across Europe and the Gulf, bringing people together through gatherings, research, and institutional dialogue. At its core, STELLA exists to strengthen the presence and participation of women into the art market, really thinking about that long-term influence of women within the cultural landscape. And how we started, well, many years ago, Greta and I met in Dubai through a mutual connection in the art world. And we'd both experienced separately, before we even started working together, we'd been at the same galleries, the fairs, the private collections, the dinners, and we'd sort of spent years moving through this world. And we kept noticing the same thing, that women were in the room, they were buying seriously, thinking seriously, often years ahead of even where the conversation around them was. But the infrastructure, the networks of recognition, the platforms just hadn't caught up. And it still felt like it was built from an older model, and an older model of who a collector is assumed to be. And I won't sort of go into the descriptions of that, but you can kind of imagine, I think, the general stereotype. So STELLA wasn't really a business plan in that traditional sense. It really genuinely came from an observation that Greta and I had, and also from a real belief that women collectors are important, they're serious, and they're quite transformative for the art world, and we need to have them included at the same levels that men participating within the art world. And STELLA was not created to diminish men's participation in the art market. Quite the opposite. We actually have some amazing supporters of STELLA who are men. We have some fantastic male collectors who really back what we're doing as well. But this is really focused on women to really start to create a platform that supports them. So that's how it came to be. And that was a number of years ago, obviously, that we had that meeting, and we set up STELLA a year and a half ago, just over a year and a half ago now. It's been a busy last year.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I think an interesting aspect of this is the idea that collectors are supporting one another. I don't think that's something that's necessarily talked about often within the art world. But what would you say are some of the ways that women collectors who are members of STELLA support one another, whether it's during major art world moments like art fairs, or even in between these major moments when people aren't meeting in person?
Well, I think the sort of the key art moments for us are obvious meeting points, because our community is naturally there. So, we've hosted dinners, workshops, we've hosted private gatherings around Basel, around in Qatar, in Abu Dhabi, in London. And it's always fantastic because I think being physical in a room is just so much more impactful, and it can't replicate the online experience at all. And I think you learn so much faster in person as to someone's, interest, personalities, and create deeper relationships that way. So it's really important for us to have these connecting points. But honestly, I think the more meaningful work that we're doing is actually happening away from the art calendar moments. And that's where you really see this community coming alive. And it's things like a patron calling another STELLA patron about a specific artist that they're interested in, or, an introduction that we've been able to quietly make, which has facilitated someone building their collection or navigating a certain element within whatever their goals might be. It's our patrons joining forces to sit on an institutional board. So it's really a myriad of different activities that are going on behind the scenes with STELLA that is probably the most exciting. For instance, Catherine Pettigas is a wonderful London-based collector focused on Latin American artists, and she has just started a biennial. It's building a biennial in Merida, for instance, and this is sort of the perfect example of the kind of ambitious projects that through STELLA we're able to share with our community and sort of give them first insight, and really championing these projects by women collectors, which is really exciting and sparks a lot of interest and dialogue. Yeah.
So STELLA, of course, focuses exclusively on women collectors. I'm curious, in your experiences, are there certain qualities or maybe certain priorities that you feel like distinguish how women collectors are engaging with the art world today, whether it's through philanthropy or institutional support or supporting underrepresented artists or a variety of other topics?
Yeah, of course, Adam. Well, one thing that I always like to clarify is that there isn't one way that women collect, just as there isn't one way that men collect. Every collector is different. But we do see that many women are bringing a different set of priorities to collecting. To give you an example, they're more likely to prioritize collecting works by underrepresented artists, and they're also expanding what it means to support the arts. Collecting for them, indeed, becomes part of a much broader ecosystem of cultural support through, for example, philanthropy, mentorship, advocacy, and institutional engagement. An aspect that I find personally very interesting is the long-term perspective that emerged throughout our study. In moments of market uncertainty, that long-term mindset creates a remarkable degree of consistency. Rather than stepping away from the market, many of them continue collecting according to their own vision. That's because women are less investing-driven and therefore less subject to external changes, apparently. I think that's a very important point, especially because it has the potential to bring solid stability to the market over time.
And so beyond the podcast, STELLA is actually launching a STELLA Report in collaboration with ArtTactic that'll be available later this summer. Can you give our audience a sneak peek what the report exactly is about, why you felt it was important to create a global benchmark study focused on women collectors, as well as maybe share some of the key findings that you think are worth highlighting?
So Greta and I feel that women collectors are not a niche within the art world, and they're one of its most consequential forces and one of its least understood. And I think that's really one of the key reasons why we created this study, because we felt that it was an under-examined area of the art market. And some of the early findings that we have exposed through ArtTactic are really incredible. I'm going to tell you 5 things the data shows. This is from a preview of our report, which your listeners can actually download and have a little sneak peek if they would like. Number 1, women are the fastest growing collector segment. So despite a challenging market in 23, 24, women collectors, particularly those under 45, maintain stronger buying momentum than men, proving more resilient and in some movements more expansionary. It's quite exciting. Number 2, collecting is values-driven, not investment-driven. So to back up what Greta was saying, we find that women approach collecting with a fundamentally different set of priorities. Investment value motivates 36% of men compared with 24% of women, which is a gap that widens significantly among younger collectors, which is super interesting. Number 3, representation is a defining priority. Women collectors are significantly more likely to prioritize collecting works by underrepresented artists, which is what Greta was discussing earlier. 4, women are moving into cultural leadership. This is probably one of our most quite fundamental stats actually that's come out of this report, is showing that women are really a lot more motivated to take up leadership roles in arts and culture than men. At 29% of younger women expect to move into leadership or advisory roles within cultural institutions in the next 5 years, compared with just 11% of younger men. So it's quite a stark difference. And I think it really just crystallizes how influential women are going to be in the arts and cultural sector moving forward because of that. And number 5, patronage is being redefined. So women collectors are expanding what it means to support the arts beyond acquisition. And this is what Greta was talking about when we see that women are really taking on a more altruistic and community-focused approach to their collecting, which we don't see as much in the statistics around male collectors. Perhaps, Greta, you could talk a little bit about the background of why we teamed up with ArtTactic.
Yes, I think that in general, we felt that there's been a great deal of discussion around the growing purchasing power of women, but very little research exploring how women collect and why they collect. Together with ArtTactic, we wanted to create what we hope, of course, can become the first long-term global benchmark dedicated specifically to women collectors. Through the report, through the STELLA report, I guess that what we wanted to understand are the motivations, the behaviors, and the different ways women contribute to culture. If we think about the Great Wealth Transfer, this report becomes very significant. As we know, indeed, over the coming decades, an unprecedented amount of wealth will move into women's hands. This is honestly a cultural and also historical change. And it's very exciting as it opens up to many new possibilities. In this context, it becomes crucial to understand how different perspectives, priorities, and needs may coexist and contribute to a richer and more dynamic cultural landscape. Studies such as the STELLA Report are also relevant because they may help galleries, institutions, cultural organizations in better understanding how collective behaviors and expectations are evolving. Of course, we hope this report can be used to develop strategies that better reflect how women collect and engage with art in the future.
And so looking forward into the future, I'm curious, what do you hope STELLA can become? What do you think women collectors need, and what can you provide to them in terms of continuing to grow and support this community?
There's so much we want to do, my goodness. Look, I think Greta and I, we really hope that STELLA can become the spark that might ignite another woman's journey into collecting. We are both passionate art lovers, collectors, and we really just want to share in that love first and foremost with other women, and to give them the support in collecting that maybe wasn't there for someone like myself or one of Greta's clients. So I think that's first and foremost. And we also want STELLA to serve as a record, all these wonderful women who are either directing or owning collections outright internationally, because there are some fantastic women collectors. And, you know, one of the key aims is to really spotlight these women, to give them the platform and to show what a woman-owned collection can look like and the achievements by these remarkable women collectors within the industry. And look, in 10 years, it'd be great to look back and, and sort of think, well, if you're questioning why a platform like this needs to exist, hopefully by then no one will need to question that, because the industry will have changed in such a positive way. But I think, and what we'd love is for STELLA to really contribute to this shift and to be taken seriously, and to, just to really help expand collections of real meaning and legacy. I think that's how I feel. What about you, Greta?
Yes, I totally agree. Also, Adam, sometimes they're like, why people ask us why we set up an alliance for women collectors, as women are very present in the industry, and that's of course true. But what we felt was missing was actually documenting what women collectors are doing and building, and recognizing how they sustain the cultural ecosystem in which we all are. We also felt there was probably a lack of spaces also where women collectors could meet across generations and geographies, where they could exchange ideas and build relationships around collecting. And what I'm referring to is not networking for the sake of networking, but genuine dialogue between people who share a deep commitment to art. That's where STELLA came from, and I guess we really wanted to create a platform that brings women collectors together and gives more visibility to the impact they are already having on the art world.
And I think what's really exciting is the demographic reach, as Greta mentioned. Our patrons are located all over the world, from Oman to Milan to London. It's really exciting. And we've also had some incredible contributions to the STELLA Report. Wonderful, really prominent collectors who are doing fantastic work internationally, like Catherine Pettigas, based in London, Patricia Sandretto in Italy, Valeria Napoleoni, Ingrid Best, Mona Khashoggi, Aisha Selden, Fatima. We're really excited to have these women's voices and perspectives within the report, and they just give a real tangible, documented evidence of what we're saying statistically. These are the women who are out there leading foundations. They're committing their time, energies, and funds to really supporting institutions and artists, and they're at the front line. So it's wonderful to have their involvement as well.
Greta and Chimère, thanks so much again for coming on the podcast and sharing more about STELLA. It's a really interesting and important initiative, and everything you're doing to help support women collectors in the art world. And if our listeners want to learn more about STELLA, potentially join, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can absolutely reach out to us on social media. We are at STELLA_Alliance. They can also drop us an email at founders@stellaralliance.com, or visit us at www.stellaralliance.com. And we'd love to hear from women everywhere. We have patrons from Oman to Milan to London, even the States now. So we're really excited to hear from everybody, to hear the different perspectives. And we also welcome the input of men as well, because male collectors are an important part of this conversation too. So we look forward to speaking with everyone, and hopefully you get a chance to download, read the report, and find it as interesting as what we have.
Perfect. Thanks so much again, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much.